research to figure out and talk to other people about it. And I'm just backlogged with what I've already got to do right now. So I'm just going to leave it in the I don't know, but I have to lean towards the side of probably not. Don't understand why the deception would even take place. Not even going to ask anyone that question, and I'll get to it later sometime. So it's funny that I'm getting to it later at a point where a bunch of guys that claim they know a lot about it want to talk about it. That's kind of neat. So I don't know much about it other than a long time ago when they had the Flat Earth Society, as they called it. This was a group of folks who were convinced the Earth was flat. And then the ball guys came around, and Magellan and Vasco da Gama and all the explorers said, no, it's round. And then everybody believed it because they got on a boat and they went around, and most people didn't go on a boat, so whatever. So there was some legitimacy to the argument at the time. And then they got infiltrated by people who made such ridiculous arguments that it sort of made the Flat Earth guys look bad. And then that's kind of happened again nowadays. And more people are interested now because we've had means to leave the surface of the planet like we never had before. And so more people are on board with theories and YouTube and video and stuff. But it's a big old quagmire for me. I don't understand how you could even how you could calculate it. Why they? I mean, I know the government lies and tells all kinds of bullshit, so you got me there. No worry. But I don't understand how they could even benefit from doing this. Whereas I could totally understand how they could benefit from collapsing 2 towers and triggering a war based on a lie. So I see the logic behind why you would want to kill Kennedy, because he's got like 11 reasons, from smashing the CIA to Federal Reserve note destruction and bringing in his own money kind of thing, and a lot of other stuff too. And so I see the logic behind a lot of these conspiracy theories and notions, whether it actually pans out that way. And I haven't been able to figure out in my own brief, admittedly, ponderings of Flat Earth, how exactly would that benefit the person trying to pull off the notion that it's a ball in the first place. And then on the other side of the issue, I am.
Should we start with that one? That's easy.
And then I'm completely, and there's just to close out, I'm also completely aware of the fact, and I've been troubled by this, not a whole bunch, but nominally over the years. I've noticed photographs of the new photographs of Saturn are in, the new photographs of Cassiar, and the new photographs of this and that, and another planet. And fuck, you look at it, and in the very tiny bottom right corner, left corner, it'll say artists rendering by. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought you said there was a photograph of the thing. I thought you said this was, why is it an artist rendering? Why are they adding color?
Because it has to be.
Okay, so I'm just saying to you, this is the soup of the questions that I was in, and I didn't even have enough fire in my belly to pursue these things. It just seems like a big old quagmire. I don't see a clear motive in why anybody would do it, and I have seen motive in all the other things of a conspiratorial.
Because it has to be.
So there's a logical gap I'm just presenting you folks with that, hey, I'm coming from this as a guy that doesn't know anywhere close to what you know about it, and where I have taken it to has not been all that serious of a distance. And I just have never been able to see a clear motive in why you would even want to pull this off. So have at her. Tell me what's up. Tell me what you think. Tell me how you calculate one thing one way, and then another guy calculates another thing another way. Tell me why a lot of satellite and weather balloon videos appear to have the curvature of the Earth, and other ones don't appear to have the curvature of the Earth. And tell me exactly how the hell you could have a 300-foot high or whatever the hell it is ice wall around the perimeter of a disk. And is the disc floating in space, or is it sitting on something else? Tell me all about it.
Shall we draw straws, gentlemen?
I'd start with the most fundamental.
Before you guys have it or two, I'd also like to ask any British folks on the phone still. I know we've got one or two. I'd like to seriously ask this question of how much of this flat Earth stuff, real or otherwise, scientifically storied or not, is in sync with or makes fun of or is the actuality of these multitude of Terry Pratchett novels. You know the one, that guy, that British author, Terry Pratchett.
Yeah, I think
Discworld.
There's analogies in the Pratchett stories, isn't there, that hint towards the reality that a flat plane could exist, isn't it? I don't think there's much.
Is this a notion that the late author Terry Pratchett wrote like 57 books on this? Did he think was he a flat Earth guy and sort of in a fictitious way wove all of that into these crazy?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't suggest to speak for him or even know with any knowledge, but certainly there's a reason why it's apparent within the storylines. Is with a lot of stuff like this, isn't there? Information's released, so whether that's at request or his desire to leak information he felt he knew, I don't know. But
that's all I know.
I'm not.
All I got to ask for now is go ahead and have at her and let me know. Let me tell me.
What I do know about Terry Pratchett is he was quite outspoken, wasn't he? And certainly the sort that you wouldn't put it past him putting hidden messages or blatant messages in his books.
Makes sense. But go ahead. Well, somebody crack open the door.
The why. I guess the big one you seem to have the biggest fascination with is the why. And for me, it simply is the biggest lie of them all that holds the rest of them together. If they can control your mind to the point that you don't even know where you live from the time you're born to the time you die, then all the other lies that they throw at you daily, hourly, by the second, that's just icing on the cake. How? Well, then the details start getting a little crazy there. I mean, we've only had the technology to get up that high since, the 40s, late 50s, when the first little rockets started going up. And at that point, a lot of careers have been built. A lot of, literal, billion-dollar industries were being grown on these ideas that were not cemented. The ball has not been in place since 5,000 years, 2,000 years, or 500 years. We've found many articles from the 1900s where professors and teachers were being run out of town on rails because they were teaching that the Earth was a ball and that it wasn't flat. So the idea that this was... we can send you many links on many different. Again, this is 3+ years for some of us here working on these things.
Could I draw a cheesy analogy without going into history? I would, as you said, you can understand why the purpose, the consequences, and the reason for doing something like knocking down the Twin Towers. You can see that it led to enablement of more draconian laws, etc., etc. You can see the purpose there. I would suggest if you were to, if you were to knock down the Twin Towers that actually prove a connection to a creator, and whatever that creator is, if you can destroy those pillars within the insides of people, that makes them a hell of a lot more malleable. If you can make them internally feel that they are insignificant and a consequence of random chance, as opposed to a divine creation.
Well said. And I'd recommend to any listeners, sorry, this is only on my own, Adam, nothing to do with your statement, but you should look into some Trey Smith stuff. That's a really good starting point.
That was a deep cut.
You got quite detailed when you were talking metastasis and your condition, and Trey Smith does a heck of a job going into specifics and giving scientific facts and basis to the theory of evolution. I would start there.
Trey?
Trey, yeah, and then Smith, and start at 100 ways to kill evolution, or I think it's something like that. Don't quote me on it, but. Yeah, he combines a lot of dry scientific stuff with, some stories and stuff. He's an acquired taste, but as Walt will attest to, he delivers.
Quite quirky.
He delivers.
Yes.
Okay. It's just that, let me ask you a quick question.
Sure.
I have always come at the awareness of my life, etc. That we live on the earth. It's a ball of floating space. All the things you guys are making fun of and saying is ridiculous. But that you also stand, and you probably didn't think that your whole life. So you understand where I'm coming from. This as a little kid thinking you're on this. If it's all bullshit, I totally swallowed the story, right? But I'm saying to you, even though I think the world is round, and I don't hear anything about flat Earth, and I don't know shit about it or whatever, I think I'm living on a ball. I think you got to be, if you're on the south side of it or whatever, you're being held on by gravity. All that stuff from school is all true. I am no less drifting apart because of the war, feeling upset because of social injustice and the scummy elite at the top sucking away all of our life force and
you're getting closer now.
You are so close.
You're right over the target.
I don't
Keep
think
digging.
I would be.
Keep
but
digging.
what I'm saying is, at this point, I think that they can get away with those manipulations and shit just as well if I think we're living on a ball than if I actually knew we were living. Look,
so
put it this way.
do you believe in morphic fields?
10 more seconds, because I don't know what that means. Let me close this out before we open a whole new can of worms. I'm just saying, if I was with you fellas already, and I fully understood and believed, and even if other people didn't believe me, if I was 100% going, yep, we're living on a flat earth, no question of that. I'm still upset about Trump wars. I'm still upset about Fukushima nuclear shit leaking in. I'm still upset about corporations dumping oil into the Gulf.
Not about
I'm still upset about all kinds of things. I'm still upset about genetically modified foods. I'm still upset about the fact that I can fucking use a plant to save myself from these kind of cancerous misadventures, and they're telling me I can't use it, and if I use it, I'm a criminal, but if the government sells it, they're the good guy. I'm still just as upset. I still think it's terrible that these guys artificially took down 9/11 and caused all these fucking problems, whether it's a flat earth or a ball. So I don't even know what the advantage is still, if that's a ball or a flat earth. That all these other terrible things are going, and you're going to use depleted uranium in Iraq to blow the shit out of people. And we were warned in the early 2000s that if they go in and kill people in Iraq and Mosul and places like this, that you're going to create a generation of angry people that want to come back and attack us because you killed their family. I don't see how any of that would change, whether they were on a sphere or a plane.
I don't think the facts change. I think the point I'm alluding to is how you as a human being and how as a society, in terms of a group response, we respond to these situations. And if we're inherently and subconsciously told that actually we are insignificant, there is nothing after this, then all we do is live the survival mechanism, which is to fend for ourselves. If actually we know deep down in our core that we are significant and this matters, then the group think, not necessarily any individuals, changes. And I think that's the cleverest part of the plan, is if you look at the introduction and the purpose, if you want to know why the globe came, that's the cleverest part. And it's took 500 years to get the group psyche to this level of convincing themselves of it, the level of insignificance.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things I do know that betrays more leaning towards the flat earth side for the skeptic, from coming at it from the skeptic's point of view, one of the things that I've learned, and I don't know much, but I'm just reminded of this, I did read this, that when you're a commercial airline, say, you've got particular routes that you use, or routes, depending if you're from America, the States, whatever. If you use a route, a pathway, if you will, to get from New York to Chicago, to get from Toronto to Florida and all this, there's a certain route that they try to stick to. And if you go from Canada to England, there's the Great Circle route, they call it, where they hook up over Greenland, if you're talking about on a ball. So a lot of these flight routes that are available in commercial airline travel from one place to the other, as I understand it, it seems kind of odd. Like, why do you have to go from here to there to get to there? Like, why is the hub there? And it's this strange sort of leg, and then people just go, oh, yeah, what are you going to do? That's what the airline does. That's what they do. But if you do it on a ball,
you know what's working then.
Make sense. If you do it on a ball, it doesn't make sense. But if you run that same flight leg that you thought didn't make sense on a flat plane version, a map version of the Earth, then it somehow makes even more sense to go that way. Do you guys know about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, you can actually track planes, and there are certain areas between South America and Africa where they completely disappear off of these tracking charts. Now, if you have a family member on a flight that's going through that area and you're trying to make sure their flight's getting where it's supposed to be, and you suddenly look on there and their flight's nowhere to be found on this tracking system, you might get a little upset. That's insignificant. The point is that the things they're telling us, the distances they're giving us, none of it's adding up. There's a map from 1945 that is an air map. That is what we classically call the flat Earth map. Why is that map around in 1945? If they're not using it. Well,
the way I'd put it, Walt, mate, is if you're on, I've not seen this for years now. Everybody's Ryanair here. It's cheap airlines. But in the old days, there used to be a little monitor in the back of your headrest, and you'd see the plane. And I remember going on my honeymoon and watching me fly from Britain all the way to the Caribbean. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And actually, lovely. But at what point is there any evidence of the correlation between the cartoon you see on that screen and what was going off in reality? You can check that. You can check the airspeed.
Literally have you in a cardboard box with a couple of guys wheeling you around. You have no idea once you get inside there. Like, you really don't. I mean, another thing to look at is these transatlantic flights over, like, to New Zealand and stuff. They'll close the windows at a certain height so you can't see what's going on, and you'll just exactly what you well, because it's no big deal. They just do it casually, you know. Like, the biggest way to hide something is in plain sight.
It's sleep time. Everybody shut your windows.
Yeah. Oh, don't be offensive to the other people. We prefer the lights off.
So what are they blocking out at that point? They're blocking out that you're so high up at that point that you do see that it is flat, so they do shut the windows? Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's a lot of stuff you may see. You may see a wonderful hot spot. You might see, a couple of you might hear some stuff in the engine, or you might see some stuff that maybe looks bubbly up there. I mean, they go up pretty high. They don't want you up there to know. But it's like what you said, eh? A lot of it, they just get explained away like, oh, well, travel nowadays, do-de-do, and people just pass it off. That's how you know the stuff's working. Like, you just accept it, right? Just as 2 + 2 = 4.
Speaking of airlines and speaking of pilots, we have quite a few that have come out on tape and come on shows and spoken about their knowledge of the fact that it is definitely flat. Our own John Savage, who apparently has already gone for the day, he's done quite a lot of work with gyroscopes that are used in these same types of planes to keep them flat and level across a horizontal plane as they travel across an airplane goes across a plane. Gyroscopes don't show any motion to the Earth over a 24-hour period. They should if it's rotating. Rigidity and space of these. I wish John was still here. He's the man for this. Balloons that show the curvature and high altitude footage that show the curvature usually are going to have a fisheye lens involved. We've had many people in the community send up these balloons that show perfectly flat horizons at heights that are way past what we should see. Curvature, not just curvature, but a ball would immediately have a dropping away of the horizon in every direction from your eye line. And that's not apparent at any height.
Well, listen, here's something that I'm reminded of. I'm still going to reserve judgment on all this. This is, for me, going to be
absolutely.
This is going to be input of information. I'm not getting into any kind of camp, but I'm always interested in people that have who've bothered to spend enough time to come up with some kind of data. But here's something that comes to mind that you guys will probably tear apart like sharks after chum. When I was a little kid, in the 60s, and I was born in 62. So like by the late 60s, I'm 6, 7, 8 years old. And I wanted to do something that I never got to do my whole life. I don't know why, but it was very, very exciting to me. And it's because I flew to England at 7 years old. At some point, I became aware of the Concorde and how sexy that thing looked. And it was all like 70s, mid-century design, cool kind of thing. And it looked like an amazing, cool plane. And it was going to go there way quicker than the 7, 10 hour, what was it, 7, 8 hour flight. This thing was, I can't remember what the flight time was from Toronto to England, or from New York to England, I should say. But I wanted to get on that because it just looked like a cool plane, you know. And then at some point, relatively recently, like 15, 20 years ago or whatever, they stopped having Concorde flight. They retired the Concorde. And the thing about the Concorde is what they said was, and I don't know if this is true or not, But they said the reason it was able to go so fast is, it's got a way fantastic engine and everything, and it's aerodynamic more than a regular plane, but it goes so much higher up than the regular plane. And they stopped doing that. So I assume that if you were, I never got on one.
There was more to that.
If you're a passenger on a Concorde and you're up at the highest point that a Concorde could go, that's probably as high as anybody could go outside of a rocket ship.
My dad flew that Concorde. Actually, it was quite the experience. He said he got the whole certificate and everything. And to this day,
pilot?
Him and I, no, he flew it. He flew that flight. He was a real estate developer in North York. You know, Madison Center and stuff like that. He used to be involved with kind of buildings, and he did the flight. And one of our contention points is he'll say, "Yeah, but James, I saw the edge of space from the Concorde." But now that we've had 3 years of data behind us, and we can come at it logically. Like I used to get so nervous.
There was
sweaty.
More, there was more
go ahead.
To that.
Go.
Sorry, there was more to that Concorde boast that you allude to. Obviously, it was quite big here. It was a Anglo-French production.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And another good example of retrograde technology, that we can't do something that we could do 40 years ago. Bit like the lunar landings. But the boast was that it went so high you could see the curve of the Earth. That was a known phrase over here. That's quite well known. So ask yourself, why did they retire something that you could go from London to New York in 2 hours?
2 hours.
I mean, that's just not useful, is it, in the business world? And you can see why people would, the prices weren't.
The way they made it go away, Adam, too. Yeah. They tanked it all on that real estate market. I mean, that's when they hung it off. Oh, too many costs, not enough people. But that's really bullshit if you think about it. It's 2017. It's a flight that could shatter speed records and get people to where they needed to go. And it claimed to be able to do something fantastic. So great on you for saying what's not being said and why isn't it here anymore.
Yeah, I'm not saying you could or you couldn't see at the 50,000 feet it was flying, or maybe a bit more, 60, whatever. But what we do know is we've got balloon footage at 110, and the horizon's still flat. So you have to question the validity of that.
Yeah, but the difference being is that not everybody gets to go up and see what's going on in a weather balloon, especially at the era of the Concorde, whereas anybody that could purchase a ticket was able to sit beside a window and see that thing back and forth all the time. That's the difference between that and a weather balloon. And it's just too bad that it's not there anymore. I still wish I could take that ride. But it would be interesting to see, wouldn't it? And then they decided to get rid of that. And they said also, not only one of the reasons I heard they were getting rid of it because it wasn't cost effective anymore. It's not a huge cabin, and they were going to lean more. They were going to lean more towards having larger planes that don't go as high, that hold way more people in smaller seats to make a better profit. And when they pulled out the profit motive, it seemed to make sense. Okay, that's why you're getting rid of the Concorde, because even though it's expensive, you can only take X amount of passengers. Where if you take a big old wide body Airbus, you can get way more people in there, make way more money per flight. So that made sense to me. But
just wait. Next year, SpaceX will take you up. You'll be able to see the curve with SpaceX. I mean, they're promising it now. It's coming, right? Alan, how many times have we been promised that? We were promised that with the first missions to the moon. We were promised launch on the moon with the shuttle missions. We'd all be able to cruise from
so close
one side of the planet to the other with just a snap of the fingers with this shuttle.
Hyperloop, and shuttles.
How many times have we been promised these amazing things, and the one time it was there, it's been taken away?
Yeah, lots of times. Yeah, I know. I don't understand much of that.
We haven't been back to the moon.
What's that?
We haven't been back to the moon. We destroyed that technology, and it's too hard to recreate that technology in 2017.
Well, I like the way
you think about that for a second.
Well, you can't even build a pyramid exactly with the specifications of the one they built a long time ago. They tried that in the 60s. This guy tried to build that. He said, money's no object. He consulted construction companies in Chicago, this guy. Tried to just rebuild on the same scale. And they even allowed the cheat of pouring concrete for the bricks, for the big stone panels. And they said, okay, we'll let that go. But what we definitely need is it has to be as exactly precision built as the ones in Egypt, and it has to be that the point of the pyramid from above is directly equidistant between each corner, and the contractors and the sixers are going, that can't be done.
Right.
But meanwhile, 2,000 or 10,000 or 5,000 or whenever they built the pyramids, it was no problem, apparently. So I don't know. Pretty strange stuff.
So
the
NASA's
basic
questionable.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
So we can kind of throw NASA out, whether it's ISS footage and the green screen and the fakery of all the images that they're giving us, right? We can't necessarily use them as a reliable source on the shape of the Earth.
Okay.
Despite $50 million a day, we can't go to them.
Wow.
So what, in your experience, so we can check out NASA, what is it that's telling you that you're on a ball in space?
What's telling me? Well, aside from hearing about it your whole life, there's that. Aside from hearing about it your whole life, there's the ball.
Right. So second conditioning.
I think the thing that I'm most resistant to in altering my perception of what I believe to be the shape of the thing and the context of the universe. Let me ask you a few questions. So, if that's fake and it's flat and it's not really round, let me ask you about this. Never mind the Earth itself.
Mm-hmm.
Look at photographs of nebula. You know those photographs of space? It looks like a giant eyeball.
They're pictures.
Those big God pillar kind of cloudy
Pictures.
things.
Images.
Compositions.
Yeah.
So what is there? So what is there in? I anticipated you were going to say that stuff. So what is in the absence of that? Are we like? What is the actual
mystery and excitement and wonderment into what we are going to find out when we hammer down the basics of the lie? And the basics is something that Josh and the Iron Realm crew here have been saying for the last few weeks. We're not spinning. There's no motion like John's
never been
gyroscope.
proven. In fact, it's been disproven and failed every time the attempt has been made.
And there's no
prove
curve.
the Earth's motion.
And there's no curve. So there's those two huge things. Everything else we should focus and figure on.
Water finds its level.
So if it's not a ball floating through space, you're saying it's a disc. What, floating through space, or
no idea?
No, we're pretty much over.
I love not knowing. All I know right now is that it's not what they tell us. They show me phony pictures. They've indoctrinated me with magic since I was a kid. The people that put together NASA and JPL and all this billion, hundreds of $billion industries were pagan witches. So I don't know much. I just know I was like hand shackled, bamboozled. So I'm just waking up.
Let me ask you this. Of the Flat Earth Society, or not, whatever that is, guys that believe that the Earth is flat, of those folks, do we have conflicting factions such as this?
Absolutely.
Everybody that knows that Kennedy was killed, believes that Kennedy was killed, and understands that he was killed, JFK, I mean, everybody that believes this, of that group of people that understand he was killed, some of them say it was the mafia. Some of them say it was the CIA. Some of them say, you know what I mean? Like there's different.
Right. Some of them say it was the Secret Service guy with the armor-piercing round behind him. Right.
Some of them say it was on behalf of the Federal Reserve. Some of them say he was going to smash the CIA to 1,000 pieces. So
well, unfortunately, at this point, Alan, that's exactly what we are, is a bunch of guys and girls and experimenters and people trying to figure this out. Because unfortunately, we don't have that $50 million a day. We're trying to do this by grassroots.
Okay, I'm not trying to do anything other than to just ascertain.
No, but that's it.
I think I get the point you're trying to make, Alan. And yeah there is. What there actually is at the moment is a level of discord in the community as people try to enforce their doctrine. You know, there is a paradigm shift as you realise that the Earth's not a ball, and people try to cling on to a model. And there are people in the community that are desperately trying to switch from one defined paradigm to another. And I think the biggest shift in Flat Earth is to realise that you're shifting into the unknown. You're not shifting to a new model. And that's what we receive a lot of criticism for. Oh, you can't give a model. Well, of course we can't yet. And it would be unscientific to postulate one with the little data we've gathered so far. But We're getting there, is what I would say.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Slowly.
So much.
Then catch up the guy that's me, that I don't know what's going on, and then we just rephrase
Well,
my
we've
analogy.
just given you the two basics, like 100% men. That's it. It does not move. Nobody in history has been able to record the movement of the plane that we live on. And number
Aries
two,
failure,
Aries failure, Michelson Morley, so many. Two, there is no curvature ever been observed to have found.
Okay,
Water
okay.
finds its level 70%. So those are that's what brought all of us here, and then we've taken off and gotten confused and gotten sidetracked and split up into little factions of this, that, and caboodle. But really, we need to master and refine the basics.
But listen, if it's a round, so my understanding is like a round situation with an ice wall.
Well, no,
going around the edges.
you've got the basic puddle in a field of ice, which is the plane we live on. You've got people suggesting that we are actually still a ball, but it's geocentric; it doesn't move, and everything moves around it. In some extreme, you had the hollow Earth sort of theories as well, but the biggest kind of discord at the moment is a kind of holographic possibility of reality, and its incorporation in kind of theoretical physics and a repeating universe, so that instead of the plane as we would understand it, or a puddle, actually you've got a 0 to 0, you don't get to 10, you go back to 1 again, repeating kind of quantum theory universe where you've got a flat square map that repeats infinitely, so as to create the illusion of a circle, I suppose. It's not one I profess on, but there is quite a lot of discord as we head into the theoretical physics world, which is, for me, a little bit disappointing. Certainly as guys here like to stay a little bit more based in measurable and observable phenomena rather than trying to postulate into
I just wanted to know if there were factions of understanding, like, for example, if it's a flat disk, if it's a flat thing and we're on this flat plane, you have to say to yourself, and this is what comes to me, is this a flat plane that is literally just a disc floating in space like Terry Pratchett? Or is it a flat plane like the very tippy top flat plane of a gigantic tree stump? And if you went straight down from the edge of the ice wall or whatever, it would go down like hundreds and hundreds of miles or something like that?
The way I would excuse it would be to say use the same apologetics you use in your mind when you're told that the universe is infinite. And imagine a plain sheet of ice, and that's got the same credibility of infiniteness as the universe has. And within that, the orbiting sun has burnt a very tiny little hole in which our world, our realm is contained. There could be lots of other suns burning little puddles for life. There might not be. But
there might not
who knows? But use the same apologetics you give to the modern physics you hear to give the same plausibility to an infinite plane as you do to an infinite.
Is another puddle just outside our puddle any more implausible than a planet raining diamonds and Chardonnay,
magical forces that do everything like crazy glue?
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so Alan,
sorry.
Imagine the JFK assassination, and everybody had all these different theories as to who it was that killed him.
Right.
What if they could all gather under the one banner that it was not Lee Harvey Oswald? The Warren Commission report was complete bullshit. The government was lying. What if they all gathered under that and charged forward against the government, saying this is our issue, and they could leave all their petty differences aside? Well, what happened was the CIA said, well, those are just conspiracy theorists, right? And that's where the term conspiracy theorist was.
That's where it was born,
It was born,
So we have that going on in the Flat Earth too, right? We have people throwing in ridiculous claims and making us look silly.
Well, that's
like the classic Flat Earth Society. I mean, their whole claim of the Earth rising upward to create gravity, that's immediate idiocy that someone finding it looks at and says, okay, I'm done with Flat Earth Society, and moves right back to the ball belief. Doesn't do research.
The French term for it is agent provocateur, right? Where you
exactly.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah.
So if it's a ball, it's 25,000 miles at the equator. We know the size of the Earth. We've been taught this our whole life. Yeah, none of us were
25,000 around. Yeah. Okay.
Right?
That's actually what kills them. That's the greatest thing is that number they're stuck to, by the way. Keep that in your head for later. Anyways,
25,000 miles. Are you talking about, because, hey, listen, I want to be 100% specific this. So
Sure.
pick a country that's on the equator. Let's go with Ecuador. They have it in their name. So that's the equator country. If you start in Ecuador and you were able to fly around the edge of the equator all the way around, right, hugging the Earth and the ball, that's 25,000 miles by the time you get back to Ecuador. That's what you're saying?
And
No,
change.
Yeah.
Right? Pretty much a circle of circumference of that's 25,000. I'm just refreshing my number on what my awareness of what I was taught. It's
Well, now Walt's
25,000.
questioning my numbers.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Go ahead. So I'll
Yes,
keep
that's
that in
correct.
mind. Okay. So go ahead. That's in mind. Go ahead.
So if we know that's the ball, we should be able to find the curvature, right? Because we know it's a ball. Finding the curvature on that ball shouldn't be that difficult if that's what it is.
Well, like the other guy said, I'm sorry because I can't keep track of all these voices and no faces, but somebody said that, yeah, wherever you're at on a ball, on a sphere, whichever direction you look, it's going away and it's going to drop off. I understand that.
Yes, sir.
exactly, Rubs. Keep it special. Yeah.
Okay, so with that in mind and a 25,000 mile circumference, then what?
So if we can send a balloon up, say, 70 kilometers? What's the highest balloon footage, guys? What's the highest one that's out there?
120, I
110.
believe.
Yeah.
100,
I thought
yeah.
it was 120. Okay.
120 miles?
1,000 feet.
120,000
Yeah.
feet, sorry.
Okay. Yep.
Still level, right? That there is no curve that's dropping away. It's still flat and level, right? So maybe it's only as far as we can see, right? There's camera resolution. There's all sorts of things. The point is, we can't find that curvature that should be there on a ball that's 25,000 miles around its circumference. Approximately, we'll call it 8 inches per mile squared, right? So wherever you are and you're looking out at a distance, you can calculate what the curve should be if it's a ball with 25,000 miles at the equator.
The dropping away of the horizon from your point based on the spherical
Exactly.
25,000.
And not only the drop looking north and south, but also east to west. Keep in times how many times you've been on vacation, bro? I know you've been through cancer, but you've also traveled and seen the oceans in Mexico. You look left to right, man. How many hundreds of miles are you seeing left to right, dead flat? Not only straight with like north south with your eyes, but you look left to right, it's dead flat everywhere. You should be seeing the curve, and there's none ever.
Now, science is going to tell you. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, they're going to tell you, well, you're too small, right? The planet is too big. You're ants on a basketball. You're never going to see the curvature. Right. And they say, but there is no curvature. And they say, of course there is. Look, there's a boat going out over the horizon, and it goes down from the bottom up, right? It's going over the curve. Look, you can see the curve right there.
3 miles away.
So do you see the discrepancy? 1 minute you're too small to see the curve. You just can't see the curve. And then the same thing, they're showing you the boat go over the curve, right? So they're showing you the curve of the Earth. Now here's the
discrepancy, but how do they create the impression of a discrepancy of the boat going over the curve?
Well, because it looks like it's going over the curve. Here's where the flat earthers of today are coming in hot and hard. Okay. They're pulling out these cameras, these P900 cameras, and all you got to do is bring it back into focus. Once you zoom in, all of a sudden you can see that boat that just went over the horizon. Turns out it didn't go over the horizon. It didn't go over the curve. It just went out of your field of view. It resolved itself from the bottom up, right? So you just that's how it went out of your field of view. Because if it went over the curve, no amount of zoom is going to bring it back.
Right, yeah.
So that's where the issue falls, is we're seeing this time and time again. These boats just come back into view. We're seeing too far.
And we're seeing that's it.
Is the moon round? Is the moon round, or is it flat?
Oh, it's definitely round. It's definitely round.
Looks round to me.
Have you seen that recent photography? There was a recent thing viraling around on Facebook and other places where some guy with a typically average camera had a pretty fantastic zoom lens, and he goes right into the moon, like more than you've seen before. You can really see the pockmarked sort of surface of it. It is clearly a ball, right?
Well,
have you seen an inverted? They take a face and they invert it like into an impression of a, say, like plaster of Paris almost. And then it's painted in a certain way that when you look into that impression and move your head a certain way, it suddenly pops into 3 dimensions, and it's a 3-dimensional face looking at you fully 3D. But you walk over there, you're putting your hand into a depression of that face. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
All right, so you can make a lot of things with the illusion of being 3-dimensional only if you can keep it locked directly in your focus, right? You can't necessarily turn away from it. So it's got to stay facing directly you for it to maintain the illusion, yeah? Uh-huh. Like the moon would be, say, tidally locked. So tell me, you're looking at all these pock marks. Yeah. Where do you suppose those came from a moon that's tidally locked to the Earth? Did they shoot up from the Earth to leave the craters?
I don't know. I would assume it would have been bombarded by junk like meteorites, etc.
Yeah, you would think.
But we're gravitationally the bigger object.
Came from. They don't know where it came from.
Well, if you guys are on the money, and if you guys are accurate, I can suggest this, that if you guys are accurate, and somehow the moon is really round, like a sphere, like we believe it, it's easier to believe this ball that you're standing on Earth is also a ball while you're looking up at that other ball almost every night and seeing the ball.
So the billiard table is a ball because all the billiard balls upon it are balls?
What's that?
So the billiard table
No. I'm not trying to convince you of the opposite.
No, I'm just saying that's the reverse of that logic. You know, I mean,
I think the point there is you're assuming it's a ball, and this part comes from the simulation theory, which is through bigger observation of the moon, it doesn't actually behave like a ball, especially when viewed from different parts of the world. It actually maintains its face wherever it's viewed, even at the same time from different parts of the world. You don't see a rotation as you would expect, even as small as the angle would be, as they suggest, the 250,000 miles to the moon.
But if you're looking at the moon, but my point is, I'm only trying to, at this point, I see a logic in supporting your fellow's argument, and that is, it looks like a ball, the moon I'm talking about. We see the moon, we see that it's a ball, and we see when it's dark, and we see when it's full, and we've all gotten the impression that it's a sphere. Not you guys, maybe, but you probably did when you were younger. There's a sphere up there, and we're taught that that's a sphere, and we were taught that the Earth is a sphere, and we can't see the Earth, like you said, because we're too close, and we're on it, and all this, and there's the discrepancies of the curvature and the horizon, whatever. But we can so easily see the moon, and we can see it, whether it's not, maybe you're saying it's not, but if we see the moon, we do so see it as a sphere. You got that round looking shape with the shadow and everything else, but we're looking at that. We're not on the moon looking back at the Earth. But the fact that we're told that they're all balls, right? All the planets, Uranus and Saturn, it is the same thing, but it has rings and everything. We're told they're all balls pretty much. There's no triangles and there's no flat things. So if you're standing on the Earth and you're told it's one of the balls floating around the ball sun, and you're looking up at the ball moon, you got no reason to suspect at that point that the Earth's flat.
So by looking at the moon, how much vegetation has been seen on the moon? What kind of life has been seen on the moon?
I don't know about vegetation being seen there. I haven't heard that, but I have heard about water and frozen stuff and whatever, and I don't know. But I don't know.
Guys, before we carry on into this, I'm going to have to shoot. It's getting late here for me. Alan, mate,
yes, sir.
It's been a real pleasure talking to you, dude, and hopefully we can do it again.
Well, thanks. I'm open to it. You know, not tomorrow, but some other time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You sleep well. Sleep well over there. What is it, 3 o'clock for you?
2, just coming up to 2, and I've got junior football in the morning as always, so I need to make a move. But guys, God bless. Really good show. I've really enjoyed it, and again, Alan, thanks, mate.
All right, take care. We'll speak with you in the future. Take care.
Bye. See you guys.
Take care. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Sleep well.
Like, are you guys even allowed to say stuff like, hey, I'll see you around? Like, is that even okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You see, look.
See you, Alan.
We can run around the block, right? We can put on our sneakers and go run around the block, but that doesn't mean our block is a sphere, right? So we can go around. Flat earthers can go around.
Okay, what's going on in the eclipse? What happened? There was a big deal eclipse recently, or so they say. What did that mean? Coming from the perspective of this is an actual plane; it's not a ball. The moon is questionable. The sun is questionable. What is an eclipse? What is an eclipse in normal ways, where everything's a ball? The Earth's a ball, the moon's a ball, the sun's a ball. That's an eclipse. Explain that, and then compare that to how that phenomenon takes place when we're dealing with the flat Earth and we're dealing with a flat moon and we're dealing with I don't know what your position on the sun is yet. Explain with your knowledge and awareness of the way things are in curvature of the Earth what an eclipse is from your POV.
Okay. Two things I can tell you for sure. Looking at it here where I live, which is South Louisiana, I watched the sun come down from the moon, quote unquote, come down from the 1 o'clock position of the sun, travel at about a 45-degree angle till it covered 72% of the sun, at which point I didn't understand because it hadn't started curving or doing anything to miss. I thought it was going in a straight line. It was going to cover the full sun. Obviously, something was wrong here. In my footage, I can send to you, it suddenly, halfway through all of this, takes a left turn up into out at about 11 o'clock position. There are no orbital mechanics that I've studied in many years of astronomy that explain that sun or moon taking a left turn at Albuquerque. The Earth didn't shift. The sun and moon travel across the sky every day in the ball model, so this isn't logical, what I personally witnessed. Now, theoretically, for thousands of years, Vedic astrology and cosmology, which is India, their cosmology explains that there are other dark bodies that are not seen that are also up there above the flat Earth that they believe in this ancient mythology, not, of course, current belief systems. Rahu and Ketu are the bodies that cause the eclipses, one for the solar and one for the lunar. And they are predictable. You can download an app. I had the app going during that time frame. It was on track. There was Rahu intersecting the sun that day. These are things I know and I saw. That's all I can tell you for sure, Alan, on that. The moon we've got a guy in our little realm of friends here, Paul on the plane, who does some incredible work with photography and just forensics out. Just he's amazing, and he's looked at some of this footage, and he can't find the moon in any of these transitions. It's just not there. So
that's just come out this week. That's some of that footage.
Yeah, that was amazing footage. Yeah. We'll send you some links for sure to see some of this stuff.
Yeah, do that for sure. I'm interested. Yeah.
We really have a lot of questions.
Go ahead.
Did we discuss what the eclipse is on a ball? Right.
That was the other question. Yeah, that was the second thing I had a question for you, Alan. Okay, the moon is 2,000 miles wide.
Okay.
Yep. It cast a shadow that traversed the continent backwards according to all the orbits. Now, they explain that with angles and speed of the moon, and okay, I could fall for that one. But go outside with the sun, not with a diffuser plate or a stocking over a lamp or anything like that. Go outside with the sun and make an object cast a shadow smaller than itself. The totality shadow was 70 miles wide. The full umbra was 200 or 178 miles wide. That's cast from an object that's 237,000 miles away. When you pull an object away from the shadow area that it's cast, like the surface it's casting the shadow on, the shadow gets bigger. It doesn't get smaller. It doesn't go from 2,000 miles down to 70 miles.
It just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
It just gets bigger.
It keeps getting bigger and bigger. So what you're saying is that the moon should, if it's round like this and everything's round, it should actually cast a much tinier What did you call it? A number?
Bigger,
The dark shadow?
A bigger one, because it's further away and the light source is further away. The closer you get to the surface with the shadow, it gets smaller until it becomes the size of the object. No
It'll never go smaller.
Smaller than the object. I guess I can turn my light on and show you here on my hand. It's only the size of the object. At no point it gets bigger when I pull away. It doesn't get smaller.
Right. Huh. Okay.
Right. What did you see leading up to the eclipse? Did you get a chance to
view
anything?
I was ask you, what did you see during the eclipse?
Oh, I wasn't out for that. First of all, like whether it's from a ball or anything else, I find it as a thing to be far more played up as a big friggin' deal than really it would need to be. And personally speaking, I had stuff going on that day where I wasn't even game to go outside and watch the thing or try to get into it. I didn't care. It happens every once in a while. It's kind of an interesting event. The thing I like about an eclipse is that it's not a TV channel show. It's not an announcement from some politician, and everybody kind of drops everything to go look at it. But I wasn't interested in doing it that day, so I didn't even look at it. But of course, I was aware it was going on because everyone was talking about it.
Yeah, I filmed it, guys. Actually, I filmed my house looking like it was underwater.
What does that mean?
So I filmed the whole eclipse. Just when it started to do a full eclipse, just before it went into the full eclipse, because I'm here in Washington. Actually, Salem was where the pinnacle was, and the house had a reflection on the house. It looked like you remember like getting on a diving board, looking down through the water, and on the bottom of the pool, you see those reflections. That's what was on my house.
Oh, wow.
And I had my next door neighbors, I had kids, and because I'm asking my next door neighbors, what do you think's going on? And that was, they couldn't even say anything, man. I mean, it really looked like my house was underwater. It was.
My brother in Oregon said there were these weird, ripply, dark shadows.
That's it. I'm in Oregon, mate.
Everywhere, on every surface of the ground.
This is Jersey.
People had laid sheets out because they had heard this was going to happen, so they had laid big white sheets out on the ground to see it. And I don't understand how that happens.
Me either.
Okay,
it looks
guys,
like nerds above it.
Let's pick up the pace a little bit. Quick question: what, based on your knowledge of the Earth being flat, etc., what is an earthquake?
The plate still plates. Tectonics would still. I mean, we're in liquid. The Earth is still, there's still oceans. These continents are still floating around. Pangea probably was.
Absolutely. Let me flip it back on you too. These mega quakes, man. Think about the power. If you go to websites, they're pulling them now, but they used to brag at the power of these fuckers. We're in the fringe, so let me say that. If you think about that, you get a 10.9 or a 1,220 ton megaton kilowatt. That would shake the atmosphere and tip the little wonderful balance, that tilt that's so perfect that allows light. These things are like Earth-level events. They would literally change the rotation and the spin of the so-called Earth. They're so big. Yet a butterfly can fly over the ocean, and the fish can freely move. Yet 100 trillion tons of water is being held by gravity.
I just want to say this real quick. If you can show me the video of the moon approaching the sun for that eclipse, I'll start to maybe believe it's the moon coming in front of the sun, but I have yet to see that video. It's just an object that appears in front of the sun.
Suddenly.
That being said, what causes earthquakes, I'd say, is just the ground movement. We can be sure of that. We can test that. That's, we can repeat those tests.
Well, then that does speak to on a flat Earth or a round Earth, whatever. But on a flat Earth, it speaks to a certain thickness of this flat disk or whatever is definitely there. So we can say, well, it's definitely thicker than 1 inch.
Do you know? Let me ask. Do you know how deep science can go? Let me just ask you, as a non-scientist.
Like, I can dig a hole in my backyard, and the guys downtown can dig a great big hole because they're going to put in a skyscraper that's maybe 4 parking level garages deep. I don't know how far down you can go, but you have to go a certain depth. And these earthquakes and fracking affect that area. But I'm saying, in a flat Earth, we don't know how, and you guys don't know, like how.
What if I told you What if I told you that today, in 2017, and in all of recorded history, we've yet to break 9 miles down?
I wouldn't know much about it, but
we've looked into this.
9 miles is all they can get to. That's it.
Okay,
yet you've seen the liquid ball at the center of the earth, though. I don't know how
crunchy nougat in the middle, or is that the center, the crunchy center?
The nougat, yeah. Let me ask you this: it's undeniable that the government of the United States, probably other governments too, I don't know, but the government of the United States, and I mean the government, I don't mean Trump, I don't mean Obama, I mean for a long time, the ruling party government of the United States does so have underground facilities, okay? And I'm specifically this time referring to Iron Mountain, where they store things of record, of repute, all these kind of things. So those things are really underground, number one. And so why are they under there? And like, there's certain things that are fascinating in the way of the flat earth kind of concept. Like if those guys are hunkered down with bunkers and everything else underground, why is that? Does that have anything to do with governing the control of the flat earth, or, like NORAD and places like that, where the operations center is tucked inside of a mountain someplace?
It's probably just in case all of the JFK conspiracy theorists come together under the one fact that it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh, yeah.
The same thing when the flat earthers come together under the fact that there is no curve and there is no motion.
Yeah.
Once we come together and we can actually unite, game over. They're going to need to run to their domes.
They'll have to head to the dome. Yes, sir.
It's over in minutes.
Have you got a collated series of quick facts? These always work well for people, such as you just mentioned a few minutes ago, that it doesn't make sense. This is your claim. It doesn't make sense that a gravity energy effort that's holding down hundreds of trillions of gallons or whatever of water is allowing fish and octopus and sea life to kind of zing around no problem.
Right.
So that's one fact that you have. Do you have like and you don't have to go through them, but if you have to descend or talk about it, do you have like a
we
theory,
sure do.
Like crazy bullet points or the top 10 nutty kind of reasons why it is so true?
And you know what, bro? Most of them are simple things that you've overlooked, that you've always known, that are just hidden there again. Like, oh yeah, wait a second.
Right in your face.
Right in your face. And
Let's
that's
hear a couple then. Let's hear a couple.
Well, like
okay, so I'll give you another quick one. Here's another one because it's vigil. But after this, I'll let you think about a couple because we had to earn these. I mean, you've got to go through it too. But okay, I'm in a submarine. All right, and we're 20 mile, let's say 10 miles down, okay, or whatever. How long before that submarine is out of the water because of the curve? And I'm going straight the whole time.
Okay, so you're way deep, like 20,000 leagues under the sea or something.
Well, let's say 2 miles then. We'll call it 2 miles. So we're just 2 miles under the ocean. At one time, based on the Earth's calculation and formula, on their maths, will that breach water based on the curve? And hint, it'll never breach water, by the way.
Wouldn't I was figuring you were going to do that. So, but wouldn't it be that if you were so circumnavigating a globe in an underwater vessel, that you would constantly be needing to, and therefore doing so as the captain or the navigational guy, tacking a little bit around, a little bit more. Like we go a little bit and then take it down and go a little bit, so that you stay inside the ball without breaching the surface. Because you want to be hidden under the water anyway. You're a submarine. So you'd have to keep. So what I'm saying to you is,
dude, Buddy snuck some pot. He snuck some pot onto the ship, and he's bombed. It's going straight, not compensating.
No,
this
admittedly, I don't.
Okay.
I don't think we have any submarine pilots yet, but airline pilots have stated, without a doubt, they do not constantly angle the nose of the plane down to avoid flying off into space.
Which is the same exact theory as.
Which is the same idea.
It's just more visually striking in the water because you see airplanes all the time and you're conditioned to know, like you said about 4 hours ago, here we are, we're flying. Yeah, got to get patted down. Here we go. Into the, We just take it.
So you'd have to keep tacking, a little bit drop the nose, a little bit drop the nose to be able to stay within the spherical construct, and you're saying they don't do that.
Especially
But you're asking me, how long would it take, though, for a guy that's 2 miles down in a submarine, driving, powering along straight in a straight line at some point?
What's 8 inches per mile squared? Yeah, right. Is the formula that they will give you. There's another cheat. 8 inches per mile. Anyways, I mean, the whole point is
65 miles and you'd be out of the water.
Well, there you go. See, the hero from another.
Anthony saves it. But see, that's
another real quick one is the idea that we are living on a ball that not only has magic gravity, and I call magic gravity because it's selective in all the things it does, like holding down those tons of water, but not the fishies. Well, take it to the air now. There's metric tons of air as well. Sorry. Those metric tons of air are held to the spinny space pair in such a way that at some magical line, it just is pressurized in some way that keeps this pressurized system we live in place. I mean, a can that you spray has to have a containment system. A lighter that you would use has to have a containment system to keep the gas pressurized. Yeah. What's keeping the atmosphere in place? And the 1,000-mile-per-hour spin, when we shoot those rockets out there and it has like spinning layer of air and it just shoots through and doesn't get sheared in half. It doesn't add up.
What keeps it in place? What keeps it in place is thoughts and prayers.
Gravity.
Right. Exactly.
There you go.
Gravity.
Yeah. Gravity.
Okay, so about gravity then. And I understand that you're mocking it. So let me ask you something. If I'm holding in my hand right now, it's undeniable that I am holding a ball in my hand right now. It's not a plate, okay? I got a tennis ball.
Tennis ball? Okay.
So now I'm holding it up high above my head. I'm sitting on my chair.
Let me give you a hint. That tennis ball is more denser than the air, so it'll really it's gonna rip through the air because it's dense.
So when I let go of it, it's gonna fall. But that's not gravity. It's
density and buoyancy.
That's just that some settling may occur.
Some contents may settle when shipping.
Okay. All right. Okay, let me ask you this now. This is when going back to say 9/11 or whatever, these kind of events. Let's go back to the Manhattan Project, because whenever people say to me, "Oh, come on, they could never have a conspiracy like that," or whatever, because somebody would have talked, somebody would have said something. There's no way. Now, we just learned with Harvey Weinstein that you can have 3 decades of secrecy. We've learned this with all over the place. But I used to say about the Manhattan Project, this is the building of a nuclear bomb. They pretty much created an entire town. They managed to swear enough people to secrecy. By the time they launched that thing on Japan, no one knew it was coming. They did so keep that a secret. So the notion that you can't have a conspiracy because logically people are going to talk and sing and you're going to lose the secrecy has already been proven time and again.
And it's simpler than you ever thought. Compartmentalization. People only know what their job is. They need to know the basics. They don't see the whole thing.
Right, but we do know, and I'm just using this on my way to my question. We do know that there can be. The notion has been fully disabused that in order to pull off some big scam, it's impossible because someone would sing, someone would find out, and everybody would stop it from happening. We know that's not true from the Manhattan Project and all kinds of other things. So here's my question.
Those who try to pull the cards down usually don't stay around long.
Right. So we know, though, that can happen, that you can sort of, manage to get people to shut up either through coercion or whatever it is, or fear or whatever it is. So how do you explain, and this is just like I'm trying to learn about this stuff. It's a flat earth, 100% true, but we all mostly are told and think, and because of NASA's constant animations and stuff. And my biggest problem with the flat earth thing is it seems that the size of North America and Africa has changed itself on these artistic ball renderings that NASA does keep coming up with. That's a big nail in their coffin on that side of the but because that would just be the same every time, and the clouds would be different. That's all. But
But then you read about the guy who designed it. He's not an astronaut. He's never been. He's guessing on the oceans. He's using shadings. It is Photoshop. because it
So what
has
But
to be.
it has to
It
be.
is, but what I'm asking is this: is that based on that consensus being there, I don't know how else to say it, but there must be a massive secrecy oath, swearing in secrecy club of anybody who has obtained himself a plane pilot's license or a commercial airline pilot. Are you telling me that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of pilots around?
So
the
they
world
just
that have
GPS,
flown a
which was
plane?
created by the Department of Defense, the U.S. military, good old GPS, which America builds things which are unbelievable. Like I'm in Canada, you're Canadian. The U.S. is the best of the best in their military. You don't fuck with them; they will destroy you. But yet they built a GPS system that knocks out and disappears in the southern hemisphere every time. It just doesn't work. Our military secrets are unsafe anytime we fly in the southern hemisphere on GPS, which we made. Anyway, so I'm going off on a bit of a ranty rant there, but.
Okay.
How closely do you pay attention to the highway while you're driving your car at 70 miles an hour? If you're going 70 miles an hour in traffic, say, and it's raining, right? Your attention's definitely not focused on what's beneath you, right? Or the shape of the highway necessarily that's directly underneath you. You're definitely focused on maintaining your car between the lines. And a pilot's doing the same thing. That pilot is making sure he keeps that plane in the air. Now, if you want to talk to pilots that start to question when they can keep that plane in the air and question the shape of the earth beneath them, they're flat earthers. We can introduce you to flat earth pilots all day long.
They used to fly, like really, really fly, like old time pilots with the stick and navigation. And in the early 90s, late 80s is when they started switching these automatic planes and GPS systems and actual, there wasn't any more flying. It was piloting, and it was working with technology and digital systems that Boeing and other contractors were putting into place. And when you start to dig into these systems, and Mark Sargent, Rob Durham, and Glowbusters, they've done some great work on the gyroscopes. Like even Dave Murphy will say, like, he called the gyroscope manufacturer and asked, okay, what kind of a system is it? And he found out that the pilot says, no, it's digital. It does it all by itself. And then he calls the manufacturer, and the manufacturer's like, no, it's actually, there's no digits in it. It's literally mechanical. Like, the stories don't add up. And then you find out that one manufacturer of that one chip that records the data that constantly dips the nose is a defense contractor. And there's only one place in the world to get the part from. So it's just silly. I think that pilots are trained to fly differently. They're flying in, those mostly conditions which are like in the atmosphere, like in the clouds, and they really fly off the machines now, not really the stick and chart method.
Wouldn't that then?
Really?
Okay, so wouldn't that then, if they're flying off machines, afford them the time to sit back and take a look at the horizon as it's coming and all this, not so much being trapped in traffic and 70 miles an hour with rain? Gives you more time.
Which is why.
Look at
Which is why